In episode 3, Bradley's rough stint at UBN continues. I mean, Friday's show is a disaster, but it's because her entire focus is on this Wolf River story that she's trying, along with Chip, to track down. But unfortunately, her poor performances are starting to stack up, and the staff is noticing. They all like Bradley, but she kind of sucks right now. It's pretty clear to everybody that she's just not really focused. So when the show wraps up and she takes a phone call, Mia runs out and says, "Yo, we're supposed to talk about next week's stories." But Bradley says, "Oh yeah, I'll talk to you later about it." And they set up a meeting, but the reason why Bradley was trying to get out of there is because Chip had texted her right after the show saying, "I found Claire." So Bradley jets out of there. She, along with Chip, head to the police precinct where Claire was being held, and when Claire walks out, they rush up to her. Claire wants really nothing to do with them, but Bradley says, "Claire, I know it was you. I know you're the one sending me this stuff. What is going on?" And eventually, Claire agrees to talk to both of them. She didn't want anything to do with Chip, that's for sure, because she kind of blamed Chip for not going all in on the story. But as Chip pointed out, I was busy blowing the cover on Mitch Kessler. And as Bradley pointed out, if you want my help with this thing, he's coming along with. So Bradley, Chip, and Claire all head to Bradley's apartment. Meanwhile, back at UBN, Mia went up to corporate to complain about Bradley's poor performance. And by corporate, I mean Alex. And Alex says, "Yeah, I saw it. It's bad. I mean, I told Mia this was a bad idea. And I know that you went down and you made your pitch to Bradley, but it's not working out." And Mia says, "Look, I don't disagree with you. I mean, what I care about is a good show." But the thing that Mia really cares about is the fact that she is doing her final interview that day for the head of news, a job that she was promised for the past 2 years by Stella. So she's stressed out because the product on the air isn't great, and she's just on edge that she'll once again get passed over. But Alex assures her, "Mia, you're the best person for this job, and me, along with Stella, will fight for you." So it makes Mia feel a little bit better. After the meeting with Mia, Alex has to meet with both Stella and Celine because her little story about this environmental group that she decided to post without clearance has really backfired on UBN. The guy that those environmentalists were going after in that protest was a guy named Zeke Pemberton, who just so happens to be a very big sponsor of UBN. And when the story broke, it made him look really bad, which is making him rethink whether or not he wants to re-up his contract with UBN. So Celine and Stella tell her, "Look, we understand that this is a tough spot for you because you did report the news, but we need you to go hat in hand and meet with this guy and apologize." And Celine has a pretty good idea of how she's going to do that. She's going to utilize Miles because Miles knows Zeke from selling art to him. There's a big environmental expo going on, so Alex and Miles are going to head there, and hopefully Alex's apology will get Zeke to re-up his contract. When Alex and Miles do arrive, though, they get in, they quickly find Zeke. Miles introduces Zeke to Alex, and you can tell that Zeke is not too thrilled. As Alex, however, starts to sort of apologize, she gets a blast from the past when Paul Marks walks up, and it throws Alex completely off her game. She was not expecting to see Paul Marks at this thing, and she hasn't seen him in 2 years. It's to the point where Alex actually has to excuse herself to the bathroom to collect herself because she's so shook by seeing her ex. She, however, is not the only one in the bathroom. There's another woman named Ava Carrillo. I probably butchered that name, so hit thumbs down for that. And as it turns out, Ava and Alex did a conference together a few years ago, so they're sort of acquaintances, and Alex quickly says hello to her, finds out that Ava is the keynote speaker, even though she's really only doing it to get something out of it. She agreed to do it because those throwing this thing, aka the billionaires, have agreed to fund a refugee situation. Her family were refugees. It works out for everybody. When Alex walks out of the bathroom, Miles walks up and he can tell that something's going on. Alex keeps looking at Paul Marks. Paul Marks keeps looking at Alex. So he asks, "Is there still something going on between you two?" But Alex says no. She tells Miles, "I'm going to go say hello to those people. I just want to get the hell out of here as quickly as possible. I need to make one more run at Zeke Pemberton, and then we'll leave." Eventually, though, Alex, as she's talking to these two people, Paul Marks decides to interrupt, pull her aside, and have an uncomfortable conversation that Alex was trying to avoid. The conversation, though, is a business proposal. There's a lot of bickering at first between these two. It's pretty clear that they were in a relationship and they are exes, but eventually Paul gets to the proposal, which is Zeke Pemberton is pretty sure that Alex's, quote, friends, aka the environmentalists outside, blew up an oil rig and a few people died. The story was never really run at full capacity, so Zeke has agreed that if Alex and UBN run the story and kind of even the playing field a bit, then he will re-up the contract. Paul then sends Alex the file that he has on the story, but Alex is a little skeptical about why exactly Paul Marks is doing this, and he says, well, I want to deal with Zeke, so it's a win-win. I could use a win, you could use a win. It's really that simple. But as Paul is trying to convince Alex that he doesn't have these ulterior motives, they get interrupted by Ava, who is asking Paul, hey, do you have my glasses? And that's when it clicks with Alex that Paul and Ava are an item. And now she's even more shook. She once again can't focus, and she certainly can't make her run at Zeke Pemberton to smooth things over between him and the network. On top of it, her alarm goes off to remind her that she has to have Mia's back in this interview process, but she has to call Mia and say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to make it. Don't worry, though. You're going to crush it, and we have your back. You'll be all right. Now, not too far away, downtown, you've got Bradley and Chip trying to find out from Claire exactly what she knows about the situation, because so far, Bradley's investigation has come up pretty short. And Claire tells her, I gave you everything I have, but there's something here. The three of them, though, aren't getting anywhere, and eventually Chip pulls Bradley outside to have a conversation with her, where he basically tells her, look, Claire's got a grudge. She's rich, she's bored, I really don't think there's anything here. The EPA cleared Zeke Pemberton and the group of any wrongdoing. However, Bradley does think there's something there, and as the two are squabbling over it, they hear the door close, and they quickly realize that Claire has taken off. Again. However, Claire did leave Bradley with something. She texted her a file on her cell phone, and it was a UBN payout. One of the things that Chip was really suspicious of was that UBN just buried the story. He didn't quite buy that. But there was an executive at the time that Claire said did bury the story, and that executive is named Beth Ann Hines. She left UBN shortly after. Chip just thought it was the Mitch Kessler situation. She's always had a good relationship with Chip. But this file that Claire sent to Bradley has Beth Ann receiving a $2 million payout, indicating that she got $2 million to bury the story. As they're going over this file, though, Bradley gets a text message from Mia saying, hey, are you coming? Because they have the meeting to go over the stories for next week. So Bradley says, crap, I'm going to be late. Okay, Chip, go up to Connecticut, meet with Beth Ann, see if you can find anything about this story. I got to get back to work. However, when Bradley does get back to work, Mia is not willing to talk about the stories for next week. She rips into her. She tells Bradley, point blank, you have been a disappointment since you come back here. You've made me look bad, and now I have the biggest interview of my life, and I'm going to get ready for that. Because you weren't ready to get ready for next week. So, I'll talk to you later. It's a shock to Bradley, but she's forced to just tuck her tail between her legs and walk out. As Bradley's leaving, she gets a really surprising text message from Corey Ellison, asking her, hey, can we meet? I'm in town. And she hasn't seen Corey in 2 years, since the whole UBN investigation about their relationship. But she agrees, so her investigation with the whole Wolf River situation, it's been put on hold, because now she has plans that night. As for Mia, she headed up to do that interview process. She was doing it, though, with Celine, and it didn't go great. While it's true that Mia had the support of both Stella and Alex, she certainly didn't have the support of Celine. Celine didn't think that Mia's vision for the future was quite there. She thought that Mia was content with just doing the same old news, and Celine didn't find that entertaining. And Mia did push back on this. But to Celine, she needed to move on. So when it came time to actually talk about the decision with the board, Stella did actually go to bat for Mia, saying she's the most qualified, it's not even close, whereas Celine, she wanted Ben, the guy that was all about AI and had kind of roped in the Olympics. It got to the point where Stella actually asked the board to step outside so that her and Celine could talk about it privately, where Stella told her, Ben isn't ready for this. But Celine had a little bit of a trump card. Because earlier in the day, Stella had just casually brought up that she was about to close a deal with an independent filmmaker that would be great for them. And it just so happened to be Corey Ellison. And of course, Celine was a little suspect about that because you're letting the wolf back in the hen house. That made no sense. Without Stella's knowledge, Celine decided to go meet with Corey and kind of hear him out, and she figured that there was something that Corey might have had on Stella as he tried to weasel his way back into UBN. So, Celine used that trump card. She told Stella, look, the hiring process, yeah, that's up to you. But I think some new blood and some old blood would be good. So if you want to close the deal with Corey, I'm all for it, as long as the new blood is Ben. But again, it's ultimately up to you. And that puts Stella between a rock and a hard place because she can't have her affair getting out, but yet she wants to do right by her friend and the person she promised this job to for the past 2 years. Unfortunately, though, as I said, she can't afford the affair to get out. Later that night, she ends up calling Mia to her office, and she excitedly tells her, look, I'm going to give you a raise, and you're going to hold the new guy's feet to the fire, and in 6 months, he's going to flame out, and that job is yours. Of course, Mia is very upset, but she gets even more upset when she finds out that they're hiring Ben, a person that doesn't have the respect of the staff and hasn't actually done news. She's pissed off at everybody, Stella more than anyone, because she thought that Stella was her friend. And Stella tries to tell her how tough this decision was for her, but Mia doesn't want to hear that. Mia lashes out. And it pisses off Stella so much that as Mia is leaving, she tells Stella the same thing, basically verbatim, that Celine was telling to the board. That Ben is simply better. His vision is better. And that while, yes, Stella is her friend, she's also her boss, and she has to do what's right by the company, so that's why they're hiring Ben. But that backfires completely. Because Mia looks at her and says, you're not my friend, and oh, by the way, you're not my boss. I quit. And she walks out. And this is so upsetting to Stella, she actually bawls her eyes out because she knows it's not the right decision. Of course, none of this has been run by the other exec, Alex, who is still at the conference, where she once again has an awkward conversation with Paul because their last conversation was interrupted by Paul's new girlfriend. It was awkward. Paul apologizes. Alex understands, but they quickly get into it. Alex telling Paul, you use people, and I'm just wondering how you're going to use Ava because you used me. And Paul simply saying, I'm not trying to use anyone. I'm trying to help you in this situation, but you're too hard-headed. And eventually Paul just says, you know what the problem is? You're mad that I found somebody. And she admits, yeah, I'm mad that you found somebody first. That's what I'm mad at. You found someone before I found someone. It's awkward all around. However, his deal, well, she is looking into it. She did send the files to fact checkers back at UBN, and they're doing their sourcing. Alex continues to stay at the conference waiting for the confirmation that this story from Zeke Pemberton is in fact factual. They can run it on UBN. She can give Zeke the good news and he can re-up his contract. And while she's doing so, she's listening to Ava's speech. It's a pretty good one. But that's when Miles walks up and says, hey, what did you say to Zeke? He decided to come to reason and he's going to rethink this whole thing. You don't have to run the story. He's going to re-up. And Alex is shocked. She says, nothing. I didn't make a deal with him. And that's when she texts Paul, realizing that Paul must have spoke to Zeke. And she says, what are you after in this whole thing? But Paul just texts back, nothing. And that's it. Now, as for the former head of UBN, Corey, he meets with Bradley. And it's awkward at first, but they quickly get back into the swing of things. It's always been awkward between these two. Who are we kidding? But the real reason why Corey wanted to meet is because he needs to make sure that if he goes ahead with this deal with UBN, that the feds aren't going to come after him. So he needs to know if Bradley, having met with the feds and not being in prison, if she gave them anything on Corey. And she tells him, I gave him something, but it wasn't on you. You're clean. You can go ahead with whatever it is you have going on. And that's when he explains, well, what I have going on would have me coming back to UBN. Would that be awkward for you? And it wouldn't be. I mean, Bradley cleared him of any wrongdoing because he didn't do anything wrong. But then sexual tension finally takes over. It only took, 4 seasons? But these two finally hook up. Finally. And as Bradley and Corey were hooking up, her partner in crime, Chip, headed up to Connecticut, meeting with Beth Ann. He starts off by asking, why'd you leave UBA? I was always curious. And she tells him, it's a lot of reasons. I can't really tell you, though. I signed an NDA. But that's when he presents her with the payout. And she just simply says, I don't know what this is. I'm not sure. And he thinks that she does. He thinks there's a reason why they decided to meet in a public park and not at her house. And she simply tells him, yeah, I can't help you. But then she pulls out her phone and says, I just want to make sure I have your cell phone correctly. And she writes down, go check out the UBA archives, October 2018, Wolf River. And she shows it to him. That's the little morsel that made this whole trip to Connecticut worth it for Chip.
Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.